Shalom, my friends. Right now, as you're watching this video, millions of people around the world are trapped in a vicious cycle that's destroying their financial future. They work harder than ever before, yet somehow their bank accounts never grow. They make plans, set budgets, and promise themselves this month will be different, but by the 15th, they're back to the same desperate patterns. The stress keeps them awake at night, relationships crumble under financial pressure, and that dream of true prosperity feels more distant with each passing day. If you've ever felt like you're working tirelessly but your results don't match your effort, if you've wondered why some people seem to multiply their wealth effortlessly while you struggle to maintain what little you have, then what I'm about to share with you will completely transform your understanding of financial discipline and abundance. Here's what most financial advisors will never tell you. The problem isn't your income, your circumstances, or even your spending habits. The real issue is that you're trying to build wealth using broken modern systems that were never designed to create lasting prosperity. You're following advice from people who themselves are drowning in debt, who've never experienced true financial freedom. Meanwhile, there exists an ancient framework, a divine architecture that has sustained the Jewish people through 3,800 years of exile, persecution, and economic upheaval, allowing them to not just survive, but thrive in every generation. This isn't religious dogma or mystical thinking. This is a proven system of financial discipline that has created more millionaires per capita than any other cultural group in human history. Today, you're going to discover exactly how this wisdom works and how you can apply it immediately to restore discipline and multiply your own results. In the next few minutes, I'm going to reveal 6 specific principles from Torah wisdom that address the root cause of financial chaos in your life. These aren't vague spiritual concepts. These are practical, actionable strategies that have been tested across millennia. You'll discover why your lack of discipline isn't a character flaw, but a systemic problem that can be fixed with the right framework. You'll learn the secret timing principle that explains why your efforts seem to produce no results, and how correcting this one element can cause your income to multiply seemingly overnight. And most importantly, you'll understand the divine balance between faith and action that removes financial anxiety while simultaneously increasing your productive output. This knowledge has been hidden in plain sight for thousands of years, and by the end of this video, you'll possess the keys to unlock a level of financial discipline and abundance you never thought possible. So stay with me, because what you're about to learn will challenge everything you thought you knew about money, success, and prosperity. The Hebrew word Seder means order, and it represents one of the most fundamental principles in Torah wisdom. When God created the universe, He didn't create chaos and then impose order. He created order itself as the very fabric of reality. This same principle applies to your financial life with devastating accuracy. Right now, your financial chaos isn't happening to you. It's happening because of you, specifically because you're operating without divine order in your money management. The Talmud teaches us that derech eretz kadmal Torah. Proper conduct and order precede even spiritual wisdom. This means that before you can access divine abundance, you must first establish the proper order in how you handle what you already have. When you look at your bank account, your bills, your debts, and your spending patterns, what you're really seeing is a mirror of the internal disorder in your mind and habits. The ancient Israelites were commanded to keep detailed records, to count and measure everything with precision. This wasn't bureaucracy, it was training in financial consciousness. Modern neuroscience has confirmed what the Torah taught thousands of years ago. Your brain cannot manage what it doesn't measure. When you operate in financial fog, spending without awareness, earning without intention, and hoping without planning, you're violating the fundamental principle of Seder. The result is predictable. Confusion leads to poor decisions. Poor decisions lead to financial loss, and financial loss reinforces the chaos, creating a downward spiral. But here's the breakthrough. When you implement true Seder, when you establish divine order in your financial system, something miraculous happens. Your mind shifts from reactive to proactive, from anxious to confident, and opportunities that were invisible before suddenly become obvious. This isn't positive thinking. This is the natural consequence of aligning your financial behavior with the cosmic order that governs all prosperity. The practical application of Seder starts with what the sages call Cheshbon Hanefesh, an accounting of the soul. Every single day, you must know exactly where you stand financially. Not approximately, not pretty sure, but exactly. You must track every dollar that comes in and every dollar that goes out, not as punishment, but as awareness training. Within 30 days of implementing this single practice, most people discover they're unconsciously wasting 20 to 30% of their income on things they don't value, need, or even remember buying. This awareness alone creates an immediate 20 to 30% increase in available resources without earning a single extra dollar. But the deeper transformation happens in your neural pathways. When you establish Seder in your finances, your brain begins to recognize patterns, anticipate needs, and make connections that lead to increased income opportunities. This is why the Torah places such emphasis on order, because order isn't just a good habit, it's the foundation upon which all multiplication occurs. Without Seder, you're building your financial house on sand, and no amount of income will ever feel like enough. The most counterintuitive principle in all of Torah wisdom is the Shabbat, the commanded rest. In a world that glorifies the hustle, that celebrates working 80-hour weeks and sacrificing everything for success, the Torah demands something radical: complete cessation of productive activity one day every week. On the surface, this seems insane from a financial perspective. You're essentially volunteering to reduce your productive capacity by 14% annually. Yet the Jewish people, who have observed Shabbat for nearly 4,000 years, have achieved disproportionate financial success in every society they've inhabited. This isn't coincidence, it's cause and effect. The Shabbat principle teaches that real productivity isn't measured by constant activity, but by strategic recovery and renewal. Modern productivity science has only recently discovered what Torah has always known. The human brain and body require complete rest to operate at peak performance, and without it, you're not working at 86% capacity on the days you work. You're working at about 40% capacity because of accumulated exhaustion and depleted cognitive resources. When you violate the Shabbat principle, when you refuse to implement strategic rest into your financial life, you enter what psychologists call decision fatigue and what Torah calls spiritual bankruptcy. Your judgment becomes impaired. You make costly mistakes. You miss opportunities because your mind is too exhausted to recognize them. And you say yes to bad deals because you lack the mental energy to properly evaluate them. I've seen entrepreneurs destroy six-figure businesses because they refused to stop working, while others who honored the Shabbat principle saw their businesses triple because they returned to work each week with fresh perspective, renewed energy, and creative solutions that only emerged during rest. This principle extends beyond just taking a day off. It's about understanding the rhythm of productivity that God Himself modeled during creation. 6 days of focused work, 1 day of complete rest. This isn't religious legalism. It's operational wisdom for maximum output. The science is clear. People who take genuine rest days are 31% more productive during their working days than those who work continuously. But here's where most people miss the deeper application of Shabbat. It's not just about physical rest, it's about financial rest. This means implementing specific times when you completely disconnect from thinking about money, checking your investments, worrying about bills, or planning your next income move. The anxiety and constant mental churning about finances is draining your creative and productive capacity more than you realize. The Zohar, the foundational text of Kabbalah, teaches that Shabbat is when all the blessings of the week flow down. In practical terms, this means that the strategic thinking, the creative solutions, the new connections and opportunities that will solve your financial problems don't come while you're actively grinding. They come during the rest periods when your subconscious mind has space to process, integrate, and generate new possibilities. When you implement the Shabbat principle correctly, you'll notice something remarkable. Your most profitable ideas, your best business decisions, and your most significant breakthroughs come not during the 80 hours of frantic work, but during or immediately after the few hours you finally allowed yourself to rest. This is the divine paradox. Less working time strategically applied produces more results than constant activity chaotically executed. The Torah introduces a principle that seems financially suicidal to the modern mind: ma'aser, the requirement to give away 10% of your income before you spend it on anything else. If you're struggling financially, the idea of voluntarily reducing your available resources by 10% feels impossible, even offensive. Yet this principle contains one of the most powerful wealth multiplication mechanisms ever discovered. The Hebrew word ma'aser comes from the root ezer, meaning 10, and it's connected to osher, meaning wealth. The linguistic connection reveals the hidden truth. The pathway to wealth flows through the act of strategic giving. But this isn't about charity as a moral obligation. This is about establishing a financial operating system that breaks the scarcity mindset and rewires your relationship with money at the deepest level. When you practice ma'aser correctly, you're making a declaration to the universe and to your own subconscious mind. I have more than enough. I operate from abundance, not scarcity. The psychological mechanism behind ma'aser is profound and has been validated by modern behavioral economics. When you're in survival mode, when you're clinging desperately to every dollar, you operate from a fear-based consciousness that actually repels opportunities and causes you to make poor financial decisions. Your scarcity mindset makes you suspicious of opportunities, causes you to negotiate from weakness, and broadcasts to others that you're desperate, which attracts predatory deals and repels quality partnerships. But when you practice ma'aser, when you voluntarily give away 10%, even when it's uncomfortable, you're training your mind to operate from abundance. You're proving to yourself and to the universe that you're not operating in survival mode. This mental shift is worth more than the money you give away. Additionally, ma'aser creates what the Talmud calls ayin tova, a good eye. This means you begin to see opportunities where others see problems. You recognize value where others see only cost, and you attract partnerships because people sense that you're operating from abundance rather than desperation. The practical application of ma'aser must be systematic and non-negotiable. This isn't about giving away spare change when you feel generous. It's about tithing 10% of your gross income before paying bills, before buying groceries, before anything else. For most people reading this, your immediate thought is, I can't afford to give away 10%. But here's the truth that thousands of practitioners have discovered. You can't afford not to. The ma'aser principle works because it forces you to increase your financial capacity. When you remove 10% off the top, you must become more creative, more efficient, and more strategic with the remaining 90%. This constraint drives innovation. You'll find ways to reduce expenses you thought were fixed. You'll negotiate better deals because you have to, and you'll pursue additional income streams you were too comfortable to chase before. Within 90 days of implementing true ma'aser, most people discover that their 90% goes further than their previous 100%, because the practice has forced them to optimize their entire financial system. And beyond the practical benefits, there's something the ancient sages called bracha, blessing. Those who practice ma'aser consistently report unexpected income, opportunities appearing from nowhere, deals working out better than expected, and resources showing up exactly when needed. Science might call this the reticular activating system or confirmation bias, but the results remain the same. Ma'aser practitioners experience financial multiplication that defies normal economic logic. One of the most misunderstood aspects of Jewish wisdom is the balance between Bitachon, trust in God, and Hishtadlut, human effort. Most people swing to one extreme or the other. Either they become passive, waiting for divine intervention while taking no action, or they become obsessive workers, believing everything depends solely on their effort while carrying crushing anxiety. Both approaches lead to financial failure and emotional burnout. The Torah teaches a third way, a divine balance that maximizes results while minimizing anxiety. This principle states that you must work as if everything depends on you while trusting as if everything depends on God. This isn't religious philosophy, it's a sophisticated psychological framework for peak performance under uncertainty. When you implement this balance correctly, you take maximum action without the paralysis of anxiety, and you maintain unwavering faith without the foolishness of passivity. The practical application begins with understanding the precise boundary between your responsibility and divine providence. The sages teach that you're required to do Hishtadlut normali, normal human effort. This means you must do everything within your natural power and capacity, developing skills, creating plans, taking opportunities, building relationships, and working diligently. But the results, the outcomes, the multiplication of your efforts, these are not in your control and not your responsibility. This distinction is revolutionary. Most people carry anxiety about results, spending mental and emotional energy worrying about outcomes they cannot control. This anxiety doesn't improve results. It impairs your decision-making and reduces your effectiveness. When you practice true Hishtadlut, you give 100% effort to your actions while releasing 100% attachment to outcomes. The Talmud says, Shar mitzvah b'hai alma leka. The reward for actions is not given in this world in predictable ways. This means you cannot calculate, if I do X, I will get Y result. The universe doesn't work that way. Your job is to do X with excellence. The results will come from sources and in ways you cannot predict or control. The transformation happens when you integrate both Bitachon and Hishtadlut simultaneously. You plan as thoroughly as if no divine help exists, preparing for every contingency, developing backup strategies, and anticipating obstacles. But then you execute with complete trust that your success or failure doesn't ultimately depend on your planning, but on divine providence working through your efforts. This paradox resolves the greatest source of financial stress, the illusion of control. When you realize that you cannot control outcomes, but you can control your actions, when you understand that your responsibility is to the process, not the results, something remarkable happens to your nervous system. The chronic stress that's been draining your energy and impairing your judgment releases. You become simultaneously more relaxed and more productive. You take bigger risks because you're not carrying the burden of making them work. You're just responsible for making wise decisions and taking strategic action. This mental freedom allows you to see opportunities you were too anxious to notice before, to make creative connections your stressed mind was incapable of forming, and to persist through challenges that would have defeated you when you believed everything depended solely on your effort. The financial results of this balance are not subtle. Practitioners consistently report that implementing the Bitachon Hishtadlut balance increases their income by 40 to 70% within the first year, not because they work harder, but because they work with greater clarity, less anxiety, and more strategic focus. Every 7 years, the Torah commands something that seems economically catastrophic. Shmita, the sabbatical year, when all agricultural activity must cease, all debts must be forgiven, and the land must rest completely. To ancient farmers, this commandment must have seemed like financial suicide. Lose an entire year of income, forgive all debts owed to you, let your fields lie fallow while your competitors work. Yet this principle, like Shabbat, contains profound wisdom about the nature of sustainable prosperity and exponential growth. The Shmita principle teaches that systems require periodic complete resets to operate at maximum capacity. Without strategic reset, you experience diminishing returns, accumulated inefficiencies, and eventually system collapse. In your personal finances, you've likely been operating the same basic system, the same spending patterns, the same income strategies, the same beliefs about money for years or even decades. These patterns have calcified into your default operating system, and many of them are actively preventing your breakthrough to the next level of prosperity. The modern application of Shmita doesn't mean you stop earning income for a year, but it does mean you must implement periodic, complete financial resets. This involves 3 specific actions that mirror the agricultural Shmita. First, you must forgive financial grudges and resentments. If someone owes you money and hasn't paid, you must release the emotional debt even if you can't recover the money. This isn't about them. It's about freeing your mental and emotional energy from unproductive resentment. Second, you must let your financial fields rest by stopping all major financial initiatives for a strategic period. This means pausing new investments, new business ventures, and new major purchases to assess what's working, what isn't, and what needs to change. Third, you must completely audit and often eliminate financial systems and strategies that are no longer serving you, even if they worked in the past. This is the hardest part because humans cling to familiar systems even when they're failing, simply because they're familiar. The Shmita principle forces the question, if I were starting my financial life today with everything I now know, would I make the same decisions and follow the same patterns I'm currently following? Usually the answer is no. The power of Shmita lies in what happens after the reset. The Torah promises that when you honor Shmita, I will command my blessing for you in the 6th year, and it will yield produce for 3 years. This isn't mystical language. It's describing the principle of exponential growth following strategic reset. In practical terms, what this means is that when you properly implement a financial Shmita, when you stop the hamster wheel long enough to reassess, eliminate what doesn't work, forgive what drains you, and rest your systems, you create space for breakthrough innovations and opportunities that were impossible to see or access during constant grinding activity. Every major technological advancement follows this pattern. Periods of intense development followed by strategic resets where nothing new is added, but instead everything is reassessed, optimized, and often completely reimagined. Your personal finances follow the same pattern. If you've been working hard for years with minimal progress, the problem isn't lack of effort. It's that you need a Shmita. You need to stop, assess, forgive, reset, and then restart with a completely new approach based on what you've learned. Those who implement strategic financial Shmitas every 7 years, or even more frequently in the modern economy, report that each reset leads to a quantum leap in results, often doubling or tripling their previous peak income within 18 months of the reset. This happens because the reset breaks you free from accumulated inefficiencies and outdated strategies that were invisibly capping your growth. The final and perhaps most powerful principle is Kavannah, which translates as intention or directed consciousness. In Jewish practice, Kavannah refers to the mental and spiritual focus brought to any action, transforming mechanical behavior into meaningful practice. The sages teach that mitzvot tzrichot kavannah, commandments require intention. An action performed without conscious intention, even if technically correct, lacks the power of the same action performed with full awareness and purpose. This principle has devastating applications to your financial life. Right now, most of your financial decisions and actions are performed on autopilot, without conscious intention, as mere reactions to circumstances or habitual responses to triggers. You spend money unconsciously, you work without clear purpose, you save, or don't save, based on feelings rather than intention, and you make financial choices based on subconscious programming you're not even aware of. This lack of Kavannah is costing you a fortune and keeping you trapped in patterns that will never lead to prosperity. The neuroscience behind Kavannah reveals why it's so powerful. When you perform any action with clear, conscious intention, you activate the prefrontal cortex, the executive function center of your brain responsible for planning, decision-making, and impulse control. Without Kavannah, financial decisions are made by your limbic system, the primitive brain that operates on emotion, immediate gratification, and fear-based survival instincts. This is why you can know intellectually that you should save money, but emotionally you spend it anyway. This is why you can understand the importance of investing, but feel compelled to spend on depreciating assets instead. Your limbic system is overriding your executive function because you're operating without Kavannah. But when you bring intention to each financial action, when you pause before every purchase and ask, "What is my intention with this expenditure?" When you examine every income opportunity and ask, does this align with my financial purpose? You activate higher order thinking that makes decisions based on your long-term interests rather than immediate emotional impulses. The practical implementation of Kavannah transforms everything. Start with your income. What is your intention with the work you do? If your only answer is to make money, you're operating at the lowest level of Kavannah, and your income will reflect that shallow intention. But if your intention is to create specific value for specific people while developing specific skills that increase my market value, you've injected Kavannah into your work, and your income will increase as a natural consequence. Apply Kavannah to spending. Before every purchase, pause for 10 seconds and state your intention. I intend to purchase this because. If you can't articulate a clear intention, don't make the purchase. This single practice will reduce impulse spending by 60 to 80% immediately. Apply Kavannah to saving and investing. Don't just save money. Save money with specific intention for specific future purposes. Money saved with Kavannah grows faster because you're more protective of it, more strategic with it, and more likely to invest it wisely. The ancient sages understood something profound. Consciousness itself is a form of energy that influences outcomes. In modern terms, we might call this the observer effect, focused attention, or deliberate practice. But the result is the same. Financial actions performed with Kavannah produce exponentially better results than the same actions performed mechanically. Within 30 days of implementing Kavannah in your financial life, you'll notice that money goes further, opportunities become more obvious, and your relationship with wealth fundamentally shifts from unconscious reactivity to conscious intentionality. This is the final key that unlocks all the other principles and makes them work at maximum power. If you've stayed with me until this point, you've just received knowledge that most people will never encounter, let alone implement. But knowing these principles intellectually accomplishes nothing. These 6 Torah wisdom principles only work when you actually apply them to your real financial situation with consistency and commitment. I want you to understand something crucial. The financial stress you're experiencing right now isn't permanent. It isn't your destiny, and it definitely isn't because you're incapable of prosperity. You're struggling financially because you're trying to operate without the divine architecture that makes prosperity sustainable. You're working against principles that govern all wealth creation, not because you're lazy or stupid, but because no one ever taught you that these principles exist. The modern financial education system is completely disconnected from the ancient wisdom that has sustained generational wealth for thousands of years. What you've learned today is the corrective information that bridges that gap and gives you access to a prosperity framework that actually works. Here's what I need you to do immediately after this video ends. Choose one principle from what we've covered and implement it completely for the next 30 days. Don't try to implement all 6 at once. That's a recipe for overwhelm and failure. Choose the principle that resonated most strongly with you, the one that made you think, this explains why I've been struggling, and commit to mastering that single principle first. If it's Seder, begin tracking every financial transaction with precision. If it's Shabbat, establish one complete rest day weekly and defend it fiercely. If it's Ma'aser, calculate 10% of your income and begin the practice of strategic giving. If it's the Bitachon Hishtadlut balance, begin separating your actions from your anxiety about outcomes. If it's Shmita, initiate your financial reset by auditing every system and pattern. If it's Kavannah, bring conscious intention to every financial decision. Master one principle thoroughly, and you'll see measurable results within 30 days. These results will give you the confidence and momentum to implement the next principle, and then the next, until all 6 are operating in your financial life simultaneously. The choice you make in the next 24 hours will determine whether this video was just interesting information or truly transformational knowledge. The Jewish people have used these principles to survive and thrive through 3,800 years of the most challenging circumstances in human history. These aren't theories. They're battle-tested wisdom that has created more sustained prosperity than any other cultural framework in existence. You now possess this knowledge.